She was invisible to most, just the woman who scrubbed floors and wiped away other people's messes. Her baby, small and silent, watched the world from her tired arms, refusing to be touched by anyone. But one afternoon, in a house where money whispered through marble halls, everything shifted. The child who turned from every face suddenly reached out to the last person anyone expected. What made that moment so powerful, so unsettling, that it left the entire room frozen? This is the story of what happens when love, prejudice, and truth collide in the unlikeliest of embraces.
Every morning before dawn, Marcia gathered her cleaning supplies and caught the first bus into the wealthy district. She moved quietly through mansions that sparkled with luxury she could never touch, humming soft tunes to calm her baby strapped to her chest. The little boy rarely laughed, rarely reached for anyone, except her. She was his whole world, and the world barely saw her at all. To her employers, she was background noise, efficient, polite, invisible. But Marcia noticed everything. The quick glances when she entered a room, the hushed tone that softened her name, the way her uniform announced who she was long before she spoke. She worked to keep her job, to keep a roof over their heads, to keep hope alive. And then came the day she was sent to clean the home of a man whose wealth made headlines and whose gaze would turn her ordinary morning into a moment no one would ever forget.
The mansion glittered like a museum, its air-conditioned silence broken only by the faint hum of machines and Marcia's soft lullaby. She had been assigned to clean the East Wing, rooms she'd never been allowed in before. Wealth clung to every surface. Framed awards, polished marble, photos of smiling faces that never looked like hers. She balanced her baby on one hip, careful not to touch anything she shouldn't. In places like this, one wrong move could cost more than a job. It could cost her dignity. At first, everything seemed normal. She dusted, wiped, polished, repeating the rhythm that had paid her bills for years. But she could feel the eyes before she saw them. The staff peering from behind door frames, whispering. Her presence had unsettled them. Not the cleaning lady herself, they were used to that, but the sight of a black woman carrying her child in a house like this. Someone muttered that it wasn't professional. Another questioned why she brought the baby instead of leaving him where he belonged. Marcia tried to ignore it, focusing on the work. But then came the moment that changed everything. The homeowner arrived, a man in a tailored suit with the quiet confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no. A millionaire, known in the city for his philanthropy and charm. When he entered the room, Marcia stepped aside, clutching her baby. The boy stiffened, as he always did around strangers. Everyone expected him to cry. Instead, he turned toward the man's voice. The child's wide eyes locked onto him, and then came the gasp. Tiny fingers reached out, trembling but sure. The baby leaned forward, arms stretching toward the man no one thought he'd ever touch. The room froze. For the first time in months, Marcia saw her son. Unafraid, curious, almost calm. But that quiet awe quickly turned sour. One of the other employees murmured loud enough for all to hear, "Guess money's the only color that matters." Laughter rippled beneath the man's polite smile, sharp as broken glass. Marcia's stomach twisted. The moment that felt like healing to her, a sign her baby wasn't broken by fear, became ammunition for their cynicism, as if compassion itself was being tested, measured against skin. The man looked down at the child in his arms, then at Marcia. His expression changed, something between recognition and discomfort. Maybe he saw her for the first time, not just as the cleaner, but as a mother. But the others saw something different. An image they wanted to claim, twist, display. A story that fit their comfort, not her truth. And as the whispers grew louder, Marcia understood. This moment, this innocent embrace, would not stay innocent for long. The stares around her carried judgment, envy, and something far colder. What had begun as a tender instant of connection was about to expose everything this house and the world beyond its gates pretended not to see.
The next morning, the photo was everywhere. Someone from the mansion had snapped it, the millionaire smiling faintly, Marcia's baby in his arms, sunlight spilling through the windows like a blessing. Online, the caption twisted the truth. Millionaire's heartwarming act of kindness toward his maid's child. Thousands of likes. Comments flooded in, praise for the man's generosity, pity wrapped in fascination for the lucky cleaning lady. But no one asked who she was. No one learned her name. Inside the mansion, the story became entertainment, a talking point over coffee and polished countertops. "It's gone viral," someone laughed. But Marcia stood frozen, a mixture of shame and anger burning her chest. They had turned her child's fear, her life, into their lesson about unity. Strangers dissected her image, admiring the man who reached out, but ignoring the woman who had carried the weight of it all. She wasn't a mother anymore. She was a symbol, a convenient headline that made racism look solvable with a single photo. Then came the final sting. The millionaire's assistant gently suggested that bringing the baby to work from now on might create the wrong impression. Her shift hours were cut soon after. No explanation, no thanks. The image that made him a hero quietly erased the woman who'd made the moment real. On the bus ride home, Marcia held her baby tighter than ever, tears catching in her mask. The child, sensing her pain, pressed a small hand to her cheek. She looked down at him, the same boy who reached for kindness and unknowingly exposed cruelty. In that instant, Marcia understood that the world had seen her, but not really. It had looked straight through her humanity and called it progress. And as the bus rolled past the mansion's gates, bright and untouchable in the distance, one thought pierced through the noise. How many more stories would be stolen before someone finally listened? Days turned to weeks, and the noise of the viral story faded quicker than it had risen. The world had moved on. Another headline, another distraction. But for Marcia, everything had changed. She found work elsewhere, smaller houses this time, quieter homes where her name was rarely remembered. Yet every time she lifted a rag or rinsed a mop, that image flashed in her mind. Her baby in another person's arms, the moment twisted into a lie. Still, she refused to let bitterness swallow her. She poured her energy into her son, reading to him, telling him stories where people like them weren't shadows in the background, but heroes who stood in the light. She wanted him to know that their worth didn't need permission, didn't need to be seen to be real. Over time, the photograph that once humiliated her became her reminder. How easily sympathy can disguise superiority. How quickly a smile can hide inequality. The mansion had taught her a cruel truth, that racism isn't always shouted. Sometimes it's applauded, dressed up as compassion. Years later, as her son walked across a graduation stage, Marcia realized the power of survival isn't quiet obedience, it's endurance. It's choosing to rise every day in a world that benefits from your invisibility. And maybe that's what the story was always about, not a baby reaching for a millionaire, but a mother refusing to let the world define her or her child's humanity. Because behind every feel-good moment that tries to simplify injustice, there's a truth waiting to be heard. Equality doesn't start with a headline. It starts with accountability. So the question remains, echoing far beyond that glittering mansion, how many more times will we celebrate the illusion of progress before we dare to confront the reality that still hides beneath it?